Okay, so I will reopen the regular council meeting for March 8th. And before we get into our budget information session, can we bring Nikki Gilmore in? Hi, Nikki.
Hi, Nikki.
Hi, everyone.
So before we get into the budget information session, I wanted to do two things quickly. First of all, and we all know, but I wanted to publicly acknowledge that Ms. Sheena Fraser has stepped up and taken on an extra responsibility as acting CAO while we complete the recruitment and then the transition period for a new chief administrative officer. So I just wanted to publicly acknowledge it and thank Sheena for stepping up and taking on that extra workload. And then secondly, after our last meeting, actually a couple of days after our last meeting, it dawned on me that Nikki, Ms. Gilmore, was not going to be joining us for this meeting, and I missed to allow all of us and all of you for council to acknowledge her last week as work, which finished last Friday. As you know, Nikki was with the organization for 15 years before taking on the role of CAO, I think it was 15, and then was CAO for 8 years. So yeah, I just wanted to give it an open opportunity for council to say a few things. So I'll open up to council. And if you're not speaking, let's go on mute. Who would like to speak first? Go ahead, Councillor Scott.
Yeah, thanks very much. And Nikki, thank you for being here. I'm just going to add to the words I shared with you on Friday. Just want to thank you again for your dedication, your hard work, and your professionalism over the last 22 years. And it's a pleasure to have been working with you for 14 of those years. So I wish you all the best in your future. And just kind of something from a retired person, remember now every night is a Friday night and every day is a Saturday. Enjoy, Nikki, and thank you very, very much for what you've done for the village of Pemberton. You've been a great, great person for this community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Scott.
Hey, Nikki. It's been great working with you. I think you've done an amazing job and you brought a lot of good energy and knowledge and clarity to every meeting. And I hope you enjoy whatever's next.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor Noble. Councillor Antonelli.
Well, Nikki, I just wanted to wish you well on the next stages of your career. I know you'll be staying with us a little bit on a contract basis, so I really look forward to, seeing what you got to, lead us through next. And yeah, I imagine the years to come will be really great. A little bit of a break and a change, and I know wherever you go, you'll bring your energy and optimism. And yeah, I really wish you well.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Councillor Stan.
Hi, Nikki. Pretty much going to reiterate what I sent you on Sunday night, but it still holds true. Your patience, your work ethic is second to none, and your integrity is far beyond a lot of other people I've worked with. The way you've stood up for your employees is absolutely amazing. So I can only say thank you, and those words aren't enough. On the retirement aspect, I hope you do get a chance to go to Nova Scotia. Make sure you pig out a lobster.
Mm-hmm.
I hope you really enjoy that trip. And having been gainfully employed for 20 plus years, I'd have to say you're in my top 5 to people I'd want to work with again. So probably top 1, 2. But like I said, if I ever have the chance to work with you again, I look forward to it. So thank you for everything you've done for the village, and thank you for being as patient as you have been.
No, thank you. I appreciate that.
And I did have the opportunity already to say a few words of thanks to Nikki, but I'm happy to take another quick one and just repeat what, bottom line is you led by example. The words integrity, work ethic, dedication, those, you can't use those enough in your case. And as I've said, you've left the organization, you took us through troubled times, you took us through growth, and you've left the organization stronger, you've left the corporate culture stronger, and your good work is evident everywhere. So thank you so very much.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I am curious, are you wearing slippers right now? Like, are you?
Well, I've been wearing slippers for 2 years, so I will be honest about that. Yeah, so it's nice to be able to be a little bit more comfortable when you're working from home. So at least I try to appear professional from the portion everybody can see me on the video.
Good luck. We got big shoes to fill, but know that we really wish you the best in your next adventures. So
I appreciate that. Could I say a couple words just myself?
absolutely, please.
I appreciate that. I just really wanted to thank everyone I've worked with over the past 22 years, from co-workers to council members, and I have held a variety of positions in this organization, and I would like to thank all those involved in allowing me to continue to grow through the organization and gain a lot of experience, a lot of growth myself. And I'm so privileged to have been able to be part of seeing some of the growth happen and work with council on trying to do the best that we can for this community, as I think it's an incredible community, and I'm just privileged that I'm being able to stay here myself, and that my kids were born and raised here. It means even that much more to me. Yeah, I think really that's all. I just wanted to say thank you, and I'm sure I will see you all around. Councillor Craddock, I'm sure I'll see you on the trails biking around. I have plans to get out and be a little more around town, so I hope I do run into all of you again, and we can catch up sometime soon. So thank
Thanks,
you.
Nikki. You take care.
Thank you. You too. See you, everyone.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll bring in Thomas. Mr. Sikora. Good evening, Mr. Sikora.
Good evening.
Thanks for joining us again whenever you're ready to take us through the budget information session.
Sounds great. And wow, I must also say thank you. I had the pleasure of working with and for Nikki, and the impact and the vision and the leadership which she brings each and every day is incredible. So thank you from myself and the team as well. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for having me today. Today, I wanted to go over the draft budget information session. This is our opportunity to engage public and share some highlights of the 2022 budget. It's currently in draft form. And if it's all right, I'd love to share my screen and share a presentation which might be a little easier to follow along with. Please let me know if my PowerPoint becomes visible. Excellent. Great. So today, I just want to highlight what we'll go over. Wanted to start with just resources and contact information with the budget. We'll then review some draft budget highlights. I wanted to provide an overview of where our taxes and collections directed, highlight some capital and special projects as well, talk briefly about the schedule and next steps, and then open the session to questions and feedback. I don't know if we will have attendees or questions, but I'll reserve some time at the end. And I can see a little bit through the Hollywood squares of everyone on the screen here, but Mayor Richmond, please interrupt or let me know if there is any questions that I need to address throughout. And then I have included for everyone's information, as we've seen at some of the committee of the whole packages as well, a highlight of the BC assessment roll comparison by property tax, which I'll speak briefly about as well. So as part of the budget process, we continue to ask for public engagement. We've continued to look at the budget at Pemberton .ca email, and to date we've not received any public feedback, questions, comments around the budget process. I did just want to take the opportunity to remind everyone that on the Pemberton website there are ample supply of documents found in the finance pages, specifically on the documents page. So should anyone be interested, we present information there, including the budget. 2022 draft budget highlights that I wanted to talk about today really are grounded, I think, in Pemberton having a very low relative tax rate. I think that currently Pemberton is 6th lowest of 161 municipalities in BC in terms of the tax rate. We've recently received the 2022 BC assessment completed roll. And as part of the budget process, we'll receive a revised roll with any changes or amendments. The real highlights there are that assessments have increased by 24.28% on a year-over-year basis. Consistent with a lot of the sea to sky, 22.26% of that increase that Pemberton is seeing is due to an increase in market value, 2.02% due to non-market change. So that's new construction inventory coming on primarily. And if you look at the impact to residential properties, the increase in value is 25.72%, with most all other categories showing an increase as well. If anyone's interested in the detail, I highlighted that in Appendix A. Now, throughout the budget, which has been reviewed over a number of sessions, and there are subsequent sessions to follow with a 5-year plan review and introduction of tax implications. The operational costs and reserves, as we see it, are continuing to face pressure. Year over year, the Village of Pemberton budget has seen a reduction in surplus carry forward, and that's largely due to very low tax increases over prior years. There are a lot of pressures that are impacting our view of the budget going forward, where we're projecting significant operating costs, and a lot of those are largely driven by high impacts of inflation. We're seeing that at the end of 2021, the BC CPI rate of 3.9% is one of the highest we've seen in years, and it's very expected that we'll see that pass through a lot of our services and materials and everything that does make up the budget. I would highlight that we have applied that CPI rate of increase to some of the operating expenses. A lot of thought has been put into really trying to keep costs low where we can, and be creative with not reflecting an increase to taxpayers. However, there are areas that we have reflected those real increases. Staff and council increases as well are reflected with a 3.9% CPI factor for this upcoming 2022 draft budget. I want to highlight the reserve contributions as well. Essentially, reserves are a very important part of the budget for the Village of Pemberton. Revenue does come in through multiple channels. There's both property taxes and user fees. They fund both the expenditures and department operations. But part of the funding that comes in is essentially saved or contributes to reserve, which in turn funds some of the projects and larger capital items. There are certainly multiple funding sources from federal to provincial to various taxes, grants, etc. But we really want to have a healthy reserve balance to support aging infrastructure. So it's critical that reserve contributions are put away. I'd highlight the capital reserve contribution of $347,000, the water of $324,000, and the sewer, which is recommended to increase to $200,000. As was discussed and reviewed at the Committee of the Whole meeting earlier today, additionally, staff put forward a number of proposed tax rate scenarios, and what will be incorporated into the next iteration of the budget would be the recommended tax rate increase of 5% for 2022. So to the average resident with an assessment of $763,000, that would represent a $49.63 increase. So at a very high level, I wanted to highlight where taxes and collections are directed. So when staff prepares the annual budget, we organize the classification of the budget to a number of departments or individual budgets. And the tax revenues collected fund these various services, programs, and reserves that are included in these as well. So these do include public works and parks, fire services, development services, the governance, administration, financial services, the airport, water, sewer, transit, various projects, and of course reserves. Budgets might include, I thought these were great examples on the side here to provide a little bit of an illustrative example. The team does great work with snow removal and fire services, and there's no shortage of great work that the teams are doing. Embedded in these and in the budget, I did want to highlight some of the major projects and capital projects which are reflected in this 2022 budget. Completion of the soccer fields and the amenity building at Denduff Park, along with the Bike Skills Park, are very large projects which are going on. The fire department through this year will be receiving the fire sprinkler and protection unit. There's a new fire and municipal hall study which is being conducted. There are a couple of EV chargers which will be installed as well. The aging Western Star, the plow truck that the people may have seen driving around town, clearing the snow on those big snow events, is getting toward end of life, and a new plow truck is being provisioned in the budget as well. The water treatment investigation and design is a critical project for the water supply. That's reflected in the budget as well. The Fernwood water main and pressure reducing valve replacement is included. The official community plan review and updates is another project in 2022. The Pemberton Creek bridge design also included. Aggregated sewer infrastructure upgrades. There's a number of sewer infrastructure projects which are reflected in the budget, from SCADA, SCADA system upgrades to industrial park generators. And in the fall of this year, in 2022, of course, the 2022 election will be taking place, and there's some budget included as well. So as I mentioned earlier, I really wanted to take the time to seek any public feedback, if there is any. And after today, we'll go back and prepare the 5-year financial plan for review and adoption, along with tax rate bylaws, frontage and utility rates be reviewed and adopted. And then before May 15th, tax rates will be finalized. After that, what's relevant to a lot of people is tax notices go out at the end of May, which would be due at the beginning of July. I wanted to now take this time for any questions or feedback, if there is any.
Ms. Kennedy, do we have anybody from the public?
No, Mayor Richmond, there are no questions.
Great. Well, thank you very much, everyone.
Well, okay, thank you, Mr. Sikora. I guess it was very clear. As there are no questions, thank you for that and for your ongoing work on the budget. And have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does staff need any time to do any technical changes, or can we roll right into the regular now?
You can carry on.
Okay, so we're back into the regular meeting, which means I'm just want to remind the members of the public in attendance that this meeting is a live webinar. It's being recorded, and a recording of the meeting will be available on the village's website following the meeting. I'm looking to council to see if there's any amendments to the agenda. Seeing none, a motion to approve the agenda is presented. Councillor Noble, seconded by Councillor Zant. Any opposed? Motion carries. Rise with a report from in camera. We have none. Adoption of minutes. Regular council meeting 1555 from Tuesday, February 15th. Moved by Councillor Noble, seconded by Councillor Craddock. Any opposed? Motion carries. And minutes from special council meeting 1556 from Tuesday, March 1st. Moved by Councillor Zant, seconded by Councillor Noble. Any opposed? Motion carries. Any business arising? Seeing none. Any business arising from Committee of the Whole? There is a recommendation from Committee of the Whole 225 from Tuesday, February 22nd. It's regarding review of the airport operations, and the recommendation is that staff be directed to bring back to a future Committee of the Whole meeting a review of airport operations, including consideration of delegating management of airport operations to an airport society. Somebody like to make that motion? Councillor Craddock, second. Councillor Noble, any discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. So 10 is committee minutes. We have no delegation, so we're going to go right to number 12, which is the office of the CAO. I will look to our acting chief administrative officer, Ms. Fraser.
I have nothing to report tonight
Okay.
under the CAO verbal report.
Is the federal, okay, Ms. Hutchison's going to come join us for that. Okay, so we
Yes.
will let Ms. Hutchison in then. And so we're talking about the Federal Active Transportation Fund. This is regarding the Friendship Trail, Pemberton Farm Road East Connector. Thank you for joining us. It's all yours.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having me here tonight. So the purpose of this report is to seek support for an application to the 2022 Active Transportation Fund for the Friendship Trail, Pemberton Farm Road East Connector. So Council may recall that village staff have submitted 4 previous grant applications throughout 2020 and 2021 for the Friendship Trail, Pemberton Farm Road East Connector project. Unfortunately, all 4 of these applications have been unsuccessful. So the 2022 Active Transportation Fund is a federal fund investing in projects that build new and expand existing networks of pathways and trails, etc., to support active transportation. Following a meeting with representatives from Destination BC, Squamish Lillooet Regional District, and other Sea to Sky local governments and tourism organisations to discuss this funding opportunity, the completion of sections of the Sea to Sky Trail, and specifically the completion of the Friendship Trail, was identified as the most suitable project to put forward for this fund. So that meeting took place in kind of late 2021. As such, Clear Course Consulting have been engaged by Destination BC to provide grant writing services to both the village and to the Squamish Lillooet Regional District, to the village for a capital application on behalf of the village of Pemberton for the completion of the Friendship Trail Pemberton Farm Road East Connector. It should be noted that at the Committee of the Whole meeting number 224, held on Tuesday, February 22nd, 2022, two resolutions were passed. Firstly, that that Committee of the Whole supports the village making an application for the Federal Active Transportation Fund for the original project scope of the Pemberton Farm Road East section of the Friendship Trail. And also that Committee of the Whole recommend that if the village is not successful in obtaining the grant funding, that funds be allocated from the Gas Tax Fund and COVID-19 Restart Fund for the village's share of the cost of completing the project, with removal of certain aspects, including asphalting, line painting, and light posts from the scope of the project. So just quickly to go over the costings, I'd like to go over costings for the two different scenarios here. So firstly, a successful application to the Active Transportation Fund, and secondly, an unsuccessful application. So the Class B cost estimate totals $669,000. If the application were successful, $401,400 would be covered by the Active Transportation Fund. As noted in my report, the Squamish Lillooet Regional District passed a motion in February 2020 to contribute $92,000 towards this project. So staff would recommend council allocate an amount up to $87,800 from both the Gas Tax Community Works Fund and the COVID Restart Fund to cover the remainder. So that would be $87,800 from each fund. And the second scenario, should the application be unsuccessful, and as per the motion passed at Committee of the Whole meeting on February 22nd, staff recommend council consider removing the asphalting, line painting and light posts from the cost estimate. That would bring the Class B cost estimate to $394,000. As noted, the Squamish Lillooet Regional District will contribute $92,000 to the project. Staff would recommend council allocate $151,000 from both the Gas Tax Community Works Fund and the COVID Restart Fund to cover the remainder. So I have three recommendations. Firstly, that council support the Village of Pemberton's application to the Federal Active Transportation Fund up to an amount of $401,400 to fund the completion of the Friendship Trail Pemberton Farm Road East Connector.
Maybe pause.
Secondly,
maybe pause there, Ms. Hutchinson, and then we can do them one at a time.
Sure.
First of all, if you sorry to interrupt, are there any questions on what we've heard so far, or comments? Go ahead, Ms. Fraser.
Just when we were looking at the changes in the options for that, if we don't get the grant, something that we wanted to just flag with council is the fact that if we remove the asphalt and the line painting and the lighting, we have the cycling network plan as well as trail standards and the all ages and abilities standard that we look to set up our trails. So by removing those elements of the trail, we would not actually be meeting our own cycling network plan and the standards that are set out. So just wanted to flag that with council that we may need to revisit removing those elements from that project at a future point if we aren't successful with the grant staff will look at that and potentially bring it back for council to consider again, because we won't be meeting our cycling network plan standards as well as the all ages and accessibility by removing those elements of that project.
Okay, thank you. I guess we could have that conversation if we need to, if we're unsuccessful. Go ahead, Councillor Antonelli.
Can you speak a little bit to what else we might be missing out on to take that money out of the gas tax and COVID restart funds?
That I would have to look into, because I only just assumed the position yesterday. So I would have to look into it. I can, and certainly if we aren't successful and we are bringing back direction from council, then we would bring that back and look at it. We do have to keep in mind that the gas tax funds and the COVID restart funds we have to spend it within a certain amount of time. So depending on where we are in that cycle, it may be that that's appropriate way to spend it. Because there isn't anything else to spend it on, but I'll have to check in with Mr. Sikora and just look at that. And like I said, it was something that was brought to our attention late last week, and we want to flag it with council, and certainly we would bring it back.
Yeah, as far as I know, we don't have any projects allocated for those funds, but that doesn't mean there's other projects we wouldn't want to consider for those funds.
Yeah, the gas tax needs to be spent by 2023 and the COVID restart by the end of 2022. So, and I believe that former CAO Gilmore did speak to the fact that if we were to use gas tax and COVID restart, we could do this project on our own without the grant. And it wouldn't have any impact to the taxpayers. However, with this opportunity and being a joint one, you know, it was determined that it would be appropriate to at least give it another kick at the can through the grant program, which is why this grant application is before you today. So.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, so do we want to look at recommendation 1? Would somebody like to move that? And that is the village's application to fund the completion of the Friendship Trail to apply for $401,000. Councillor Noble, seconded by Councillor Zant. Further discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. Go ahead, I can pass back to you, Ms. Hutchinson.
Sure. So second recommendation is that council allocate an amount up to $175,600 from gas tax, community works and COVID restart funds to cover the village's contribution. So that is $87,800 from each fund.
Thank you. Any thoughts on that, or would somebody like to make that motion? Councillor Noble, seconder. Councillor Zant, any discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. Go ahead.
Okay, and the third recommendation, as acting CAO Fraser mentioned, you know, we may need to kind of bring this back depending on whether or not we want to omit those 3 elements from the cost estimate. But as it stands, that should the application to the Federal Active Transportation Fund be unsuccessful, council allocate an amount up to $302,000 from gas tax, community works and COVID restart funds for the village's share of the cost of completing the project, with removal of asphalt, line painting and light posts from the scope of the project.
Thank you. Any thoughts, or would somebody like to move that recommendation? Councillor Craddock, moved. Seconder. Councillor Zant, further discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much, Ms. Hutchinson. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Okay, we're on to 12A3, which is signing authority rescinding. Ms. Fraser.
Yes, with the departure of Ms. Gilmore, we do need to get a resolution from council to officially remove her as an administrative signing authority for the village on our bank accounts, the TD Bank, the Village Pemberton Scotiabank account, and the North Shore Credit Union account. and as well removing her as signing authority from all authorization for the MFA by the Municipal Finance Authority by the village. If council recalls, on February 15th, we did appoint Mr. Sikora as our Chief Financial Officer and provided him with all of those signing authorities. So I already have those signing authorities in my capacity as corporate officer for the village. So it's a matter of removing Ms. Gilmore, and then when a new CAO is appointed, we would give those signing authorities to that person as well. We're just looking for that resolution, please.
Any questions? Somebody like to make that resolution? Councillor Zant. Second, or Councillor Craddock. Further discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Now we're on to 12B, Corporate and Legislative Services. Appointment of Chief Election Officer 2022 General Local Elections. Ms. Kennedy is going to report on this.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for hearing my report. The purpose of this report is to seek Council's approval by resolution of the appointment of a Chief Election Officer for the 2022 General Local Elections to be held Saturday, October 15th. And Section 58(1) of the Local Government Act establishes that for purposes of conducting an election, a local government must appoint both a chief election officer and deputy election officers by resolution at an open meeting of council. And then other election officials may be appointed by the CEO. Staff is currently seeking a person to hold the role of deputy chief election officer. And once a suitable candidate has been selected, a request for resolution supporting their appointment will be brought to council. The recommendation of this report is that pursuant to sections 58(1) and 58(2) of the Local Government Act, Gwendolyn Kennedy be appointed Chief Election Officer for conducting the 2022 general local elections with power to appoint other election officials as required for the administration and conduct of the 2022 general local elections. And thank you for hearing my report, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. Any questions? Councillor Craddock, go ahead.
Is it often the person in the position gets to appoint themselves to the position?
Well, it would be council making the appointment, but it is typical for the manager of corporate and legislative services to be the CEO.
Then I'll move the motion.
Did you have a follow-up motion, Councillor Craddock? Were you thinking of appointing yourself something?
No, it's just too much fun.
Seconder. Councillor Zant, further discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. And as usual, Councillor Antonelli, I'm not ignoring you, but with your delay, your hand always comes up last, so I always see you last. We're on to the cost sharing, election cost sharing. Ms. Kennedy.
This is another one from me, and the purpose of this report is to present to council for approval a draft election cost sharing agreement between the village and school district number 48 Sea to Sky for the 2022 general school elections for the electoral area 3 Village of Pemberton. In accordance with section 37 of the School Act, the village conducts the school trustee election for the Village of Pemberton electoral area. Staff has prepared a draft election cost sharing agreement based on the agreement executed for the 2018 school trustee election, and this is attached as Appendix C. And new to the agreement in 2022 is a sharing of costs associated with mail ballots, and that's set out in sections 3A3 and 3A4. Staff recommend that the village add this option to the voting opportunities for the 2022 general local election, and school district number 48 has supported this addition. And council will have the opportunity to discuss this, the option of mail ballots when staff brings forward a general election procedures bylaw for consideration at a future regular council meeting. The recommendations of this report are that the election cost sharing agreement between the Village of Pemberton and School District number 48 Sea to Sky be approved as presented, and that the mayor and the acting chief administrative officer be authorized to sign the agreement. Thank you for hearing my report.
Ms. Kennedy, any questions? Somebody like to move the recommendation? Councillor Noble, second by Councillor Zant. Any discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. So we're on to 12C, which is development services. On some more staff. Perfect. Good evening, everybody. We're on 12C. We're talking about the official community plan update, the project work plan, and OCP advisory committee terms of reference. Ms. Pedrini, it's your table.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So the purpose of this report tonight is to provide an update to Council on the status of the OCP review and update, and to seek your endorsement for the project work plan and draft OCP advisory committee terms of reference, which are attached to the report as appendices. So Appendix A is the draft project work plan, which covers the scope, including statutory requirements, the objectives, roles and responsibilities, proposed schedule, and required resources for the OCP review. Appendix B is the draft terms of reference for the OCP advisory committee. So this would be a new committee that would be formed just for the duration of the OCP review. And it would be, it would consist of residents or those people who have an interest in land in the village that would assist the village in creating and guiding the draft OCP. So I'm going to keep this brief, but I am going to turn it over to Scott, who's going to speak a bit more about the required resources.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to give a brief overview of the approach to this project going forward. Essentially, we're proposing a return to the previous plan where the village would engage consultants to help with the bulk of the work on the OCP update. There will still be a fairly substantial role for staff. We'll need to lead the effort, coordinate the consultants, provide a significant amount of input to make sure, and oversight to make sure we're satisfied with the product we get at the end of the day. A high-level schedule was included in the project work plan. I think it was page 47 of the agenda package. So we're confident we'll be able to get this project kicked off this spring. And we have an update for council scheduled in the fall where we can go over progress made to date. The budget allocation for this project in 2022 is going to be adequate once adjustments are made in light of the departure of the OCP policy planner. This is a fairly large project, so I'm planning to use some project management tools to try to make sure we succeed with this one, including a project risk register, which is just basically intended to help manage risks we see as we go along. The only one that I wanted to share at the moment is that looking ahead, we see some challenges with that, allocating adequate staff time to this project, assuming we have another record-breaking year on the development activity in the village. So that concludes my report.
Yeah, so we would basically just be looking for council's endorsement of the project work plan as well as the terms of reference for the OCP advisory committee.
Thank you, Ms. Pedrini and Mr. McCray. Questions? Councillor Craddock.
Yeah, thanks very much. Just through to Mr. McCray. What's your time frame once councils approve this to get your RFP out to get some consultants in place?
I'm looking probably spring, late spring to get something like that out.
So then when do we figure people will be at the table working? We're talking middle spring, fall?
Likely early summer kind of time frame. It's going to take a few months for the consultant or consulting team to get ramped up. So that if that activity happens over the spring, summer, maybe mainly summer, I think that will set us up well.
And then still a 2-year time frame from that point of view. Is that your expectation?
Yeah, I think that's a fair conclusion at this point. Of course, once we bring those groups on, there may be, they may have some different news for us, either good or bad. So in the council update in the fall, we'll have a much better idea regards to overall schedule, I should say.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, or comments? Seeing none, Would somebody like to move the recommendation as laid out, which is that council endorse the official community plan update project plan as presented? We'll do these separately. Would somebody like to make that motion? Councillor Craddock, seconded by Councillor Noble. Any discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. The second motion would be that council supports the proposed terms of reference for the OCP Advisory Committee as presented. Moved by Councillor Noble, seconded by Councillor Zant. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you to both. And now we're on to, very excited, the Community Climate Action Plan finalized for consideration of adoption. And this has been in the works for a while. Committee of the whole got a chance to look at it, and I'm very excited to have the public have a chance to hear your presentation. So it's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, the purpose of this report is to present to council the finalized Community Climate Action Plan, which is attached to the report as Appendix A for consideration of adoption. So I had been told to keep this fairly brief tonight, so I didn't actually prepare a PowerPoint presentation tonight, but I am going to just sort of direct you to the changes that were made to the draft that was presented at the Committee of the Whole last week, basically to address each of council's considerations that were made in the resolution. So I've created a table, and that would be on page 56 of the agenda. Basically letting you know that the time frame for the suggested review period for the Community Climate Action Plan has been changed from 5 years to every 2 to 3 years. Noting that it was suggested that it be changed to 2 years, but I just wanted to give a bit of a wiggle room in case, you know, there's always competing staff priorities. So I figured 2 to 3 years might be acceptable. As well, I've added mention of electrification of the village's own fleet under leadership 1.3A. And there was mention in the resolution about the declaration for calling a climate emergency. And I just wanted to point out that that wording was already within the draft on page 46 under leadership 1.4A. So I didn't make any changes there. Just letting you know that it was already there. Also added language to sequester 1.1A on page 47 to make note of the need for an agreement on a broad definition of old growth, as was discussed at the Committee of the Whole. And as I noted, I had noticed a mistake I had made in the appendices. So I changed the lead for certain policy work from the climate lead to planning. So that is the extent of the changes that were made to the draft. Otherwise, everything should be exactly as it was presented last week. So there was a couple of items that I did want to mention. So one was that the village might want to declare a climate emergency because that does give rise to the urgency and the need for resources and action on the climate action plan. And if council was amenable to declaring a climate emergency, I have provided some suggested wording. The other thing that council may direct staff to do would be to join the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Partners Local Governments for Sustainability Partners for Climate Action Program. That's a huge name. Anyways, joining that program is free. It basically just requires council to pass a resolution, and it helps local governments to move through a milestone framework, which basically includes work that we have already developed, meaning creating a baseline emissions inventory and forecast, which has been completed, setting emissions reduction targets, developing your local action plan, which is pending approval tonight, and then implementing the local action plan, monitoring its progress and reporting back the results to that group. So there are quite a few local governments across the country that have already joined the FCM Partners for Climate Protection Program. And so it's a great resource for the village because they'll be able to reach out and get information and help and recommendations from a whole host of other local governments in Canada who are basically all trying to do the same thing and reduce our emissions locally. So I have included the recommended resolution. If you did wish to join the FCM Partners for Climate Protection Program, and as well, obviously, I would hope that council would consider adopting the Community Climate Action Plan as presented tonight. Oh, sorry, there's one more recommendation there. And that is that given the amount of work that would take to implement the actions, the variety and numerous actions that are included in the Community Climate Action Plan, that the establishment of a new position within the Village of Pemberton be supported to oversee the implementation, monitor, and future updates of the Climate Action Plan. And that be included as part of the 2023 budget deliberation process. Oh, your mic's off, Mike.
Thank you. So we'll break it down a little bit at a time here. We'll start with general questions and then we'll go through the recommendations, which might generate more questions. But just in terms of the whole presentation, are there any questions from Ms. Pagini or Mr. McCray? As Ms. Pagini mentioned, this was presented to us last week and some of the changes that we were looking for have been incorporated. I appreciate the incorporation of the electrification of our fleet. I think that's important. I'll wait for further comment though. Is there any other comments or are there any comments from council or questions on the general report? Scott, go ahead.
Thank you for a couple of things. First of all, a great report. And secondly, adding the wording for the Old Growth Forest. After that meeting, I went back and did some looking up too. And if you were to put an age on it, there under BC, it's listed as 200 plus years old. So it was interesting to see not 100 to 150. So I appreciate that information. One of the issues I brought up at the last meeting was using the word emergency. And the biggest concern I had with that word, it was going to incorporate a fairly large cost to the community, in which case next year we would be adding a full-time position to look after this. And that's looking at the budget for 2023. And that was one of my concerns is the cost to the village right away to do this. But I understand that it is an emergency, but I'm always careful to bring new people to the table considering the cost to the community. So I'm looking forward to moving this forward at this point in time, and we'll have to try and find some way to raise those funds for next year if we're going to put somebody to monitor and run this program. So thank you for that.
Councilor Craddock. Councilor Antonelli, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thanks for a great climate action plan. I think this represents the village really well. And I like the changes that were made since our last meeting. So yeah, I definitely support it. For the climate emergency declaration, I think it would be helpful to somehow distinguish between an emergency that means we have to leave our houses tonight and the climate emergency. I don't know what the language is there. I do support a declaration, but I think we do need to think on that. I'm definitely in support of joining the Partners for Climate Protection program. And then as far as the funding for the climate action coordinator, I think that's a great idea, but I don't know, given the budget issues that we have, I think I would just put we deliberate funding rather than saying we want a new position, because funding definitely a permanent new position, I think it needs discussion. So I would just support funding.
Okay, I think the way that fourth recommendation is worded is that the establishment of a new position to oversee the implementation be included as part of the 2023 budget deliberation process. So that's, I think, is what we're trying to get to, is that we're not saying right now that the position is now in stone, and we're saying it's going to be deliberated. It will be brought back as part of the 2023 budget discussion. So is that representative, Councillor Antonelli?
Yeah, that's fine. I guess what I meant was I would just say that we can deliberate over an amount of funding to address it, not necessarily a new position, but you know what? Maybe at this point it's just splitting hairs. So.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Fraser.
Oh, sorry, just by having this resolution on the books, then it goes into our little budget list of things to bring forward. So that helps from a staff perspective to bring it forward, and we'll certainly take into consideration your comments when looking at that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Zach, go ahead.
I just want to say thank you to Ms. Pedrini for putting out a great report. I agree with Councillor Antonelli. It does show what Pembina is looking forward to in the future. I support the idea of being a part of the FCN partners. And sorry, there's somebody speaking in the background. I can appreciate joining that organization. I think being a part of that would be a huge resource for the village and hopefully help us through our goals. And as far as the new position to be allocated for 2023, be interesting to see who would apply for that, but I definitely support that as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Go ahead, Councillor Noble.
I think you did a great job with the community action plan, and I appreciate that you incorporated the changes that we requested into it. And I'm looking forward to seeing it getting implemented.
Thank you. So yeah, I mean, as noted in committee of the whole and by everybody else, I totally support the plan. The targets that have been laid out for 2030, 2050 are in line with our neighbors and internationally with many of our partners. So I think those are good targets. I think they're ambitious targets, as I've said before, but we need to have ambitious targets and we need to reach them. I think that the recommendations that are in this action plan are equally and necessarily ambitious. And as we've talked about, some of them already fall into some of our staff's work plans, but the recommendation here that a new position be applied to get these steps underway, I think is going to be very key. And it'll be discussed in 2023, but I definitely put my support behind that. You know, in terms of who applies, you know, similarly, our neighbors, Squamish, Whistler, SLRD, they've all engaged climate action staff to put their plans into action. And I think if we're going to hit our ambitious targets, we're really going to have to consider that as a necessity. It's a burden, a cost burden potentially on the community, but the cost of not doing it, I think, might tend to be much higher. And along those lines, I definitely recommend supporting a declaration of climate emergency at this point. And I think calling an emergency and getting into wordsmithing where we were on emergency, I don't think it's necessary. I think the idea is that by declaring an emergency, we are saying that as a municipality, we are going to make this front and center in our thinking. It's going to be wherever we go in our policy making. It's going to be wherever we go as we look in projects, and we are going to put the resources behind it to try to mitigate further emergency. So I believe it is an emergency. I believe we should declare it as such, and I do believe that we should therefore behave as such and work really hard towards implementing as many of these recommendations as fast as we can. So I'll get to the resolutions in a sec. One other smallish detail. I'm glad to see that we've shortened the review period, because as I said in committee of the whole, I think it's such a changing landscape. We need to review it regularly. I had a thought afterwards that I'm wondering if we want to consider, you know, if you look through our reports, when we get through a comprehensive report, at the bottom of it, it says legal considerations, budgetary considerations. And by doing that, what it does is it helps staff when preparing the report to make sure that the report is comprehensive and shows other departments' impacts, as well as council to understand, outside of the report, what are the impacts. I'm wondering if we add to that every report, climate action, some sort of impacts to either are related, how it is related to our climate action plan. If it's not, that's fine. And our climate action goals. So I'm wondering if that's something that staff would feel helpful if it were on the agenda, and if council feels that would be helpful as well. So from a staff perspective, go ahead, Ms. Pedrini. You're on mute this time.
Thank you for that suggestion. I had actually made that suggestion a couple months ago as something that could be incorporated into our staff report template. It could be climate action implications, or it could be sustainability implications, or something to that nature. Again, I don't want to wordsmith, but I think it would be an excellent way for us to keep climate action at the forefront of municipal decision making, especially for all departments and not just one person who might get assigned the lead to undertake climate action, because we can't undertake climate action in silos as separate departments. We need that more that thinking embedded across the whole organization. So just as we consider financial implications or legal implications, I do agree that climate action implications should be taken into account and be presented clearly on each report. And if it doesn't apply, it doesn't apply. I was just going to make two other points. I know that some people have used the term crisis instead of emergency. So again, I know you mentioned we don't want to wordsmith the declaration, but if council was more comfortable with declaring a climate crisis, that could be wording that you might want to consider. And as well, the whole purpose of declaring that declaration to me is to demonstrate your dedication and to basically acknowledge the urgency. And by not thinking ahead as to what staff person is going to undertake all this work, I know, because I've been working at the village for 7 years, resources are slim. And if I was still on staff, I would love to undertake this work, but I won't be there, and there won't be anyone who with capacity who can take this work on the way I look at the organization now. And so you do need someone, and maybe it's not a full-time position. I wouldn't want to make that conclusion at this point, but someone has to be given that responsibility in that role, or there's no point in adopting this plan. Implementation is absolutely key, and not pick and choose which items you think, oh, let's do this one or this one. Maybe we'll wait on that one. The whole purpose is to implement all of these actions if we want to meet our targets, which are ambitious targets, but we have to have ambitious targets because we're in a real crisis. So that was it.
Ms. Fraser, did you have comments about the process of adding that to the report template, or did I see your hand?
Well, we can certainly add it to the report template. I think, as Ms. Pedrini noted, it's not going to apply to everything. It is a lens that we can, from a staff perspective, look through. It is unfortunately one of those types of things that gets added to a report, and unless you're intimately knowledgeable about the plan or the elements of it, oftentimes it becomes something that just gets filled in without much thought. So I think that there's definitely areas where we can implement it in when we're looking at infrastructure projects and larger projects for a fees and charges bylaw. Maybe it's not something that applies, but we can definitely add it in.
Thank you. Are there any further comments, or should we start going motion and recommendation at a time? Okay, so first off, I'm going to look for a motion that council adopts the 2022 Community Climate Action Plan as presented. Moved by Councillor Noble, seconded by Councillor Zant. Any discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. The second motion would be that would be on the climate emergency declaration. What is council's preference there? I'm happy to support a motion to declare a climate emergency. There's some substantial wording around it. I won't read it all back, but it's in our presentation if somebody does want to make the motion, essentially declaring it a climate emergency and putting the resources to it.
And we would include those, into the minutes.
Yeah. Councillor Noble, did you want to speak to it or make the motion?
I want to make the motion.
Councillor Kadek?
Yeah, if I could just speak to it, or would you like a seconder first?
I'd like a seconder to speak to it, please.
I'll second it then.
Councillor Kadek, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm hearing this emergency word again. Would the mover be acceptable to putting emergency / crisis? So that there's some understanding of where we're going, but it's not a today thing where, like Councillor Antonelli says, we have to vacate our house tonight.
Yeah, I don't see a problem with that.
My, if I can make some comments, some people do have to leave their homes tonight somewhere, I guarantee, due to climate change. Some people do have that, and some people have already had to leave their homes. So to me, emergency is fine. And those are just my comments. It's totally up to the mover and the seconder. So Councillor Noble.
I'm open to it if it doesn't change the purpose of it. If it doesn't alter that.
Okay, so the friendly amendment is to add the word crisis to it, and that's from the mover, and the seconder obviously agrees. So I will call the question. All in favor of the amended motion? Or sorry, any opposed? Back to old ways. Any opposed? Is that an opposition, Councillor Antonelli?
No, I was just supporting what's everything's been said. I could also say that, maybe this is splitting hairs too, the whole providing it with 2 words, because the intent of it that Ms. Pedrini spoke of, where it comes to the forefront of our operations. I think that's what really counts here. So yeah, either way, I support it.
Okay. Call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next is a motion to direct staff to join the FCM ICLEI Partners for Climate Protection Program. Would like to make that motion? Councillor Zant, seconded by Councillor Noble. Further discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. And the 4th recommendation is that the establishment of a new position within the Village of Pemberton to oversee the implementation, monitoring, and future updates of the CCAP be included as part of 2023 budget deliberation process. Would like to make that motion? Councillor Zant, seconded by Councillor Noble. Further discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. And it's council interested in having a motion to direct staff to include in the report template a climate action plan impact lens or implications category.
Yes.
Councillor Noble, seconded by Councillor Zant. Further discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. Awesome. Again, great work. So glad to see it out there, and thank you for all your time on this to both of you. Oh, Ms. Fraser, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to note that this is Ms. Pedrini's last council meeting with us, as she will be leaving us to take a position with Lowat Nation. And I just wanted to flag that with council and thank Lisa for all her hard work for the last 7 years.
Agreed. Thank you, Lisa, and good luck. And we'll definitely see you on the other side of the Zoom table, or hopefully live table. And we look forward to working with you in your new job. Good luck to you.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone. We're on to bylaws. For first, second, and third reading, we have the Village of Pemberton Fees and Charges Bylaw 905, 2021. Ms. Kennedy.
Hello again, Mayor and Council. The purpose of this report is to present to Council for first, second, and third readings an amendment to the fees and charges bylaw number 905/2021 that would permit Council to reduce, waive, or refund development application, building, and service connection fees for eligible developments. The amendment would not impact development cost charges as they are not included in the fees and charges bylaw. Waiving or reducing fees for affordable housing projects aligns with the village's commitment to support affordable housing as set out in the age-friendly Affordable Housing Action Plan adopted in 2019 and has been supported in the past. Adoption of the amendment would offer Council the option of considering fee reductions on a case-by-case basis. Development application, permit, and service fees offset real costs to the village, and waiving these fees will impact budgets. The proposed amendment establishes eligible developments to include not-for-profit or affordable housing, rental housing that is, not-for-profit and affordable equity or fee simple housing, also for-profit affordable rental housing, and development for use by a not-for-profit society, provided that the use is maintained over time. And under the proposed amendment, the fees that may be waived or reduced include those in Schedules G, development procedures, N, public and private sewer usage, R, water service connections and outdoor water use, and T, building fees. And the recommendation of this report is that fees and charges bylaw number 905/2021 amendment fee waivers bylaw number 923/2022 receive first, second, and third readings. And thank you for hearing my report. I'd be pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Ms. Kennedy, any questions? That's correct. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks very much. And through Ms. Kennedy, on page 100, I just have a little concern over B and D, where it says is maintained over time. And I know once we're dealing with the rental projects that have come forward to council and we're looking for funding, I believe they're required to give a 25-year time frame. And I just wanted to ask if that is the case, if we should be putting in a time frame, because over time would have a lot of different definitions from a lot of different people. So I'm just asking that question.
Well, the council would choose the requirements for each development on a case-by-case basis, looking at the development and the time frame proposed. So it would be council's prerogative to state the time frame for each case. So that's why it's been left somewhat vague in the bylaw.
Great, that's what I wanted to hear. Thank you very much. So council could make any time over time as whatever length they determine, depending on the project. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much. That clarifies it for me.
Thank you. Ms. Fraser?
Just to further on that, there may be commitments made through a housing agreement, which would set a separate time frame as well, which would be obviously agreed to through council. So it provides council flexibility.
Thank you.
Perfect. Any other questions?
I'll move the recommendation.
Seconder?
Second.
Any further discussion? I think it's one of the tools we do have in our belt that we can apply to support affordable housing, and we need to use all the tools in our belt. So happy to support it as well. Ms. Fraser, go ahead.
Oh, just when you're finished this, we have one other recommendation that wanted to flag.
Okay, so I'll call the question. Any opposed? Motion carries. Go ahead.
And then the second element that is in the report is that if we implement these, once the bylaw is adopted, we do need to set in place a policy by which an organization would make application. So what we are hoping to get from council tonight is that staff be directed to prepare a policy setting out how an organization may apply for a reduction, refund, or waiving of fees and present the draft policy to council for review and adoption at a future council meeting. The intention here would be to possibly bring it forward on April 5th when this bylaw receives fourth and final reading for our consideration for fourth and final reading. And the policy would accompany this change. It is helpful both for an organization that might be applying for funding as well as for staff because it will set out what the organization must provide to the village in order to help council make a decision. So similar to our permissive tax exemption policy, an organization has to provide us their incorporation papers, their budget lines, some details about their project. So we would look to do something similar to that. And that way, when an organization makes a formal submission, formal application, all of the documentation and information will be available for council.
Thank you. Any questions on that? Go ahead, Councillor Stan.
I'll move to recommendation 2.
Seconder. Councillor Craddock, any further discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Fraser. Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. So we're on number 14, the mayor's report. I put out a little bit on some of my activities, but a couple other meetings I attended that you might want to know about. One was more of a working session, and this was led by Veronica Woodruff, and it's a workshop basically on collaboration for building resilience within our valley, and by collaboration between all the interested groups. So we're already very collaborative by nature. We have the Pemberton Valley Emergency Management Committee, which I'll speak to briefly as well. We coordinate well on many levels, but this was a more creative approach to thinking about how we can build resilience, looking ahead 20, 30, 50 years. It's very, very timely in just having had the conversation on our climate action plan. And so it was attended by emergency personnel, staff, and elected from Village Pemberton, SLRD, PBDD, and LEWAT. And again, it was a more creative approach to it. And we were the third focus group that Ms. Woodruff led through the workshop. The other two focus groups were the first was made up of residents, farmers, business owners, and they went through a very similar process, or the same process, although the conversation apparently was quite different. And similarly, they had a focus group with first responders. And she's going to compile the results of the 3 different focus groups and put together a report, again, on the collaboration, on how we can collaborate to build the community resilience. So it's very interesting. I look forward to seeing the compilation results come out of that. Every couple of weeks or so, I sit in on a meeting that's attended by the mayors from Squamish, Whistler, Pemberton, the chair of the SLRD, representative from Squamish Nation, and Chief Dean from Leetwat Nation, as well as our MLA and our MP. And sometimes they're fairly casual, sometimes they're very directed, and we've been much more directed lately. And this one started out as a discussion, most recently as a discussion around our climate action plans. And we ran out of time. Our next meeting is in 2 weeks, I believe. And I only bring it up again just because we just had that conversation, but it's a conversation between the communities to talk about how we are all dealing with climate action, what our climate action goals are, plans look like, and how we could support each other in our goals. So just lots of work in different levels behind the scenes along those lines. What else? I spoke a little bit about the SLRD meetings and the budget earlier. A couple, maybe 2 other quick items out of there. One was that our Bike Skills Park, it was approved to incorporate it as part of our joint recreation service with Area C. And another item of interest or note, I think, is Wedgwoods made an application to put 12 more lots together and supply, I believe it's 10 affordable. I don't have my full notes in front of me because I'm not at home, unfortunately, but I believe it was 10 and 12 lots for 10 of them being affordable below market lots. And there's more information to become. Part of the package was, if you recall, Wedgwoods came forward with a proposal. I'm going to say it's like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, although I've lost track of time, might be more. And that was for development on the west side of the highway, which would include some affordability units. That was felt to be an inappropriate place by the board at the time. And so they've come back with this proposal, as well as part of the package, is offering that chunk of land on the west side as part of the CAC package, basically to preserve that and call it parklands. But that's it's a little bit unclear as to how that would work. If the SLRD now takes on a park, what that looks like. So at this point, the application was approved to move forward to the next steps, and it'll be coming back with some clarification on the CACs, as well as how, if there's more units built there, especially affordable units, how they are connected with services, and if they are using services, for instance, within the village of Pemberton, is there compensation required? What does that look like? So more information to come on that, but the application is moving forward to next steps. Unfortunately, our Nuku Twal gathering has been postponed, but hopefully we'll get to do that soon. I did have a fairly short Pemberton Valley Emergency Management Committee meeting. There were some Dyking District updates. I think Councillor Craddock has kept us quite updated on that. Leeward updated on the Pole Yard Dyke, and that project is ready to go. They've got all their approvals in place. They've got the funding in place. They're currently looking for a contractor. That's probably the biggest, everybody's working towards a pretty busy construction season. They're hopeful to get a contractor and get started on the work within a month or so, if all goes well. But that's the point they're at. And the Grandmother Slough, there was a study that's come back showing the different challenges there, from beaver activity to others and blockages. And one of the results that came out of the study was a high mortality rate for the fish that get stuck in certain parts of the slough. So there's a lot of consideration being given there through Leeward, and it's been referred to their fisheries department to discuss how they can make sure the Grandmother Slough is a healthy waterway and productive for fish as well. And sediment removal will be started by the Dyking District any day now. Those activities are set to get underway. I attended a Minister's Southwestern Mayor's Call. So that's mayors from basically Abbotsford right up to Lillooet. That's the northern point. It's hosted by the Minister of Municipal Affairs. And as you probably know, there's been a cabinet shuffle. So Minister Osborne is no longer a Minister of Municipal Affairs. He was Minister Collum that led the meeting, and he was joined by Minister Baer from to talk about connectivity issues around the province. So I had that meeting, and I didn't have too much to discuss on the connectivity level, but seeing as how we have a new Minister of Municipal Affairs, I took the opportunity to introduce myself and us and talk about some of the issues that we are looking to the province for some provincial support on. And so I mentioned our housing affordability struggles and the development pressures we're feeling. I mentioned our childcare ongoing challenges and how it's been a challenge for years, and we're on our third application for funding, and we're hopeful to get provincial support to create new spaces. I didn't speak too much to this because another mayor had, but reinforced the necessity for funds for emergency mitigation projects. And I kind of encompassed all three of those with a comment about not forgetting about smaller rural communities when these funding decisions are made at a provincial level. And it seemed important to me as I sit on a call with the mayor of Abbotsford and Surrey and Metro Vancouver and, looking at big numbers and big projects, I want to make sure that the little voices are heard. So I made that comment, and I take every opportunity to speak to the need for provincial support for our regional transit goals. And so I mentioned that. And I know council is tired of hearing me talk about basketball. I'm currently down in Langley with our boys for the provincial tournament. And the only reason I bring it up is not to brag again, but there's a part of the story that I haven't told yet. And that is the fact that once we qualified, we had to win 3 out of 4 games, and they fought hard, obviously, to do it. They beat the 4. We came in 5th. They beat the 4th, 3rd, and 2nd seed to qualify, and it only left about, I think it was about 8-9 days between qualifying and going to provincials. And going to provincials is a 5-day thing. There's 4 nights of hotel rooms, there's gas, there's food, there's tournament fees, there's passes, all of the above. It comes to about well over $10,000 to fund my 13 boys to be able to have this experience. And through some generous donations from the Alumni Association, PSS Alumni Association, from Area C Amenity Funds, and from a GoFundMe where the community jumped out right away, inside of, I'm going to say, less than 36 hours, we had completely reached our goal of close to $11,000 raised. So we're down here, and it's completely funded by the community. There's so much excitement and so much support for the community that I really wanted to mention it here publicly and say thank you on behalf of the boys. So that is it for my report. Council reports. Councilor Scott.
Well, thank you, Mayor Richmond, and thank you for kind of giving the highlights of the Pemberton Valley Diking District meeting that I attended. So the only thing that you didn't bring up is they had a meeting with Municipal Affairs and Housing regarding basically the future existence of the Pemberton Valley Diking District. If they don't find an avenue to find more resources, they're just not sure how much longer they can stay operating in the village of Pemberton. So that's a huge issue, and something that we need to watch as we go along also, to see what we can do to support them and make sure that they do stay here. Without that help and work and all of the stuff they do to provide emergency services to it, would be in some big trouble. Now I have a bit of a longer report here. I attended Tourism Pemberton AGM on last Wednesday. There was 14 participants, and I'm just going to go through the highlights. And actually, I'm really surprised because without bringing these reports to council, sometimes I don't think we get the opportunity to really hear what groups and organizations are doing that we fund in the community. So I'll keep it brief, but I want to hit on some important points. First of all, they're in very good financial situation right now, with in excess of $100,000 in the bank. Some of the projects they worked on this year and they're involved in are tremendous. They're involved with the Raven Guide, which is promotion of backcountry citizenship, and they're working also on a potential for another festival this year. Worked on Nairn Falls trails and parking access. And the backcountry, they did a sanitation infrastructure project, which I brought here before. That was a $236,000 grant, where they've now installed 8 out of 10 washrooms. I think I've mentioned the names before, so I'll just quickly: Cool Creek, Mosquito Lake, Upper Paralaunch, Wendy Thompson Trailhead, Shadow Lake, Gorge Garden ×2, the Sloquet Hot Springs, and they're looking at the final 2 for Semaphore Lakes. They've applied for an additional $280,000 to continue with the financing and maintenance of these areas, so it's ongoing. Agritourism, they're working with the wayfinding signage projects, and that was $100,000 funding from Destination BC. So now we can see where their money is coming from, which is nice to see. Tourism Pemberton, they've been talking to Tourism Lillooet and Bridge River Valley on a 2 to 3 day tour, self-guided tour. So they're trying to put that together, and then they'll put that out so that it'll be part of the wayfinding project. Slow Food Cycle, which we're all very well aware of. They've got 4 video series that are available. They're looking at putting it together for this year, and they're working hard toward that at the present time. The Sea to Sky Cultural Connector campaign, 6th consecutive year, and a partnership with Whistler and Squamish on that. So it's quite popular. Sea to Sky Mountain Bike Campaign. Again, it's an advertising campaign with Whistler, Sunshine Coast, Squamish, North Shore, Bridge River Valley, and Pemberton. So there's lots of highlights out there and things for people to take a look at and places to go. Another big event they're working on is the local powwow. If that comes together, the timber framers will be back to work with them. And that grant would be equivalent of $260,000 in labor. And we know what kind of work those ladies can do when we look at our barn downtown. And that's going to be for a new arbor, which will become the largest in Canada. So that's projected for 2023. So they're working hard to put that together. They're still a part of Sea to Sky Destination Development Council. It's a 10-year plan with ongoing provides support for both Indigenous and regional projects from North Van to Lillooet. They're setting up a BC Ale Trail, which for those that enjoy a cool beverage on a warm day, and that's supporting the 2 local breweries and the 1 distillery here in town. They're associated with BC Backcountry Touring Association, mostly involved with snowboarding and skiing promotions, and that includes 9 out of the communities across the province of BC. They also brought forward the fact that Blackbird Bakery and Helmer's Organics scored the top points for posts in the last period. So going forward, they have the board of directors, which actually remain the same going forward, with Andy Meeker as president and Mark Mendonca as vice president, and 8 directors, and they're still currently seeking a secretary treasurer. And that is a long report, but I want to make sure we had an understanding how hard these groups that are funded through PEVIS really are promoting the community and doing a great job. That's it. Thanks very much, Mayor Richmond.
Thank you. And the council reports. Councilor Antonelli.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that today is International Women's Day. And one of the themes is that supporting women, more women in leadership, will help us achieve our sustainability goals. So I just thought, you know, in light of this being an election year and our climate action plan, it was worth mentioning. And then I also wanted to give a shout out to the Pemberton District Chamber of Commerce, because they put out there a really beautiful photo essay of the women business leaders in Pemberton. So yeah, thank you very much for that.
Thanks for bringing that forward. Thank you. Councilor Zant, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Richmond. Yeah, I attended the library board meeting there last week. There's a lot of good news coming out of the library. Their visits to the library has jumped by 216% just in January alone. So they're starting to see a lot of activity in there again, which Emma and the employees there are really happy to see. They started lots of different activities again in there, between chess, book clubs. They're holding a income tax seminar for people who are unsure about how to file their taxes or just need some help. They're anticipating to have the new doors installed in April, and work is still underway to secure an architect for the ramp access. They've reopened on Saturday from 10 to 4, and just leaving, they're still waiting to reopen on Sundays, and they're in talks with Ms. Burns and to figure that out. Overall, it was a good meeting, but I think the highlight was that the people have found the library again, and they are seeing a big increase in their visits, and they're really happy with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
No, I was looking forward to the new Quantrell meeting, but as you know, it was postponed, unfortunately.
Yeah. Hopefully for not too long. Okay, thanks everyone. We're getting there. We're on correspondence for action. We have a number of them. So we'll start with 16A1, which is requesting that council send a letter of support for ongoing funding of the Farmers Market Nutrition Coupon Program to the Honorable Adrian Dix, Minister of Health. And just for council's recollection, we have sent a letter of support each year for this. Any comments, or would somebody like to make a motion? Councillor Craddock. You're on mute. Look like you said you move it, but you're on mute. All right, I'm pretty sure he moved it.
Still on mute. I'll second it anyway.
Okay, any opposed?
Thank you.
Next up is from Brianne Aldcroft, the principal from Pemberton Secondary School, and Tamsin Tarling, the chair of the Pemberton Secondary Parent Advisory Committee. And this is requesting that the village subsidize bus passes for Pemberton Secondary School students. So I'll be looking for some direction as to how we reply. The staff did do some high level numbers for us that maybe I could provide for context. There are currently 301 students in PSS, and it's projected at 330 next year. So if we were to work on the 301 number, if each kid were to get a 10-time pass at $18, the cost would be $5,400 and change to the village. If they were to get a monthly pass, 40 of them for 300 kids, that would be $12,000. 6-month pass at $215 is $64,000 if they were to get 6 months worth of pass, and the 12-month pass would come to a cost to the village of $123,000 or $123,400. So that's just a little context as to what we're looking at here. Oh, this is also, just to remind us, this is also a request that came through the petition that was presented to me around climate from the high school kids. I feel like it was about a year ago that they presented that petition, and one of them was that high school kids get free bus passes. Thoughts and comments? Councillor Noble.
I'm wondering if this is something that we should bring back at our next budget session for next year. And at that point, hopefully we'll actually have transit again too, and some real numbers to work with.
We could certainly bookmark it for a future conversation. We would definitely have to include somehow in that motion that it would be the conversation well, we could start or whatever, but would have to be had at the transit committee level with the partners, because obviously there's an impact to revenues through that. So it would have to be a conversation. So if it's something that is of interest, I mean, I think at a quick look, that's pretty high cost to the village when we consider the size of our budget. And I think it's important to note that if council would like to bookmark this for a conversation down the road and to have it then go to transit committee, we could certainly do that if you'd like to make that motion.
Sure.
Councillor Antonelli, did you have some comments?
Yeah, I don't want to say we're unable to support, because I'm sure there's something we can do, perhaps not the full request, but something, because, you know, it's important. We want to encourage young people to be taking transit where possible. So yeah, I would support taking this to another venue for, you know, more in-depth discussion on what way we can help.
So how would you like to go about that? Would you like to have another conversation about this at a committee of the whole, or would you like it to be referred to the transit committee for a conversation first? What would you guys like to do?
Yeah.
The second option? Okay, so a motion to refer to the transit committee that at a future meeting, there's a discussion on the possibility of subsidizing students' bus passes to whatever degree. Does that sound fair? Go ahead, Councillor Craddock.
Yeah, I wonder, and I'm just going to throw this out for speaking about it, but it comes to mind that should we just throw it out for subsidizing passenger service to Whistler? Because I wonder if we should be reflecting seniors in this also, and that type of thing. So I'm wondering if this needs to be a little bit more encompassing than so directed at one group. And because it just came to here and we don't have the numbers other than what you're throwing out, Mayor Richmond, it needs some work on it, that's for sure.
So include in the motion that it would be for consideration for subsidy, bus fare subsidy for students and seniors? Or do
Thank
want like that? Does that work for you, Councillor Antonelli, as the mover? Okay, and did I get a seconder on that? Councillor Noble, any further discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. And then maybe a motion to have staff respond to Ms. Aldcroft and Charling to let them know that what decision was made here and thank them for their correspondence. Moved by Councillor Noble, seconded by Councillor Zant. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up, we have a letter from Ms. Rosie Pollack from the Permanent Soaring Center regarding expressing concerns regarding winter maintenance at the airport. We had a discussion around this. We've had discussion around this as well. Would somebody like to propose a response? That's Craddock.
Yeah, I'd like to leave it in staff's hand to put the response together as we talked about it today. And I think staff has the proper scenarios that were involved that they can fill in the blanks very easily and correctly. And I hope that we'll get that letter out quickly to Ms. Rosa Pellick.
Okay, so a motion to refer to staff to respond to the Soaring Center, moved by Councillor Craddock, seconded Councillor Noble for the discussion. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next we have from Chi Ho from she's project lead, and Shannon Gordon, sorry, project lead from Worcester Center for Sustainability, and this is requesting support for the RMOW grant application to UBSM Poverty Reduction Planning and Action Program to conduct an assessment and develop an action plan for enhancing regional security and resilience in the Sea to Sky. Again, just for recollection, this does align with the conversation we had with regards to the Food Security Action Plan last fall, as well as some of the work that's been getting done through Sea to Sky Community Services. Would anybody like to make a comment or move support for that?
Move support for it.
Seconder? Any further discussion? Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, we have Kelsey Watson, correspondence, House Sound Women's Center Society, and this is presenting a request that April will be proclaimed Sexual Assault Awareness Month. There was no proclamation provided. So there's if you know, we often don't do proclamations, but staff or if council wants to go that direction, there's, you know, they can provide wording or simply that April be declared Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Any thoughts or comments? Go ahead, Councillor Antonelli.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely a sensitive topic for a lot of people, and that I would be in support of asking for more information, but declaring it an awareness month, it could be a sensitive thing. So I think before we do that, we should have more information.
Okay, so you suggesting a motion to have staff respond and ask for more information to be provided to council as to what that declaration encompasses?
Yeah.
Okay, moved by Councillor Antonelli, seconder. Councillor Noble, further discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next up from Claire Fuller, this is from the Pembroke Community Coalition campaigning CNREL for safe pedestrian access over the Lillooet River at Naylor Way. I've joined a couple of their meetings over the last months and tried to support them and give them some of the history around our attempts at trying to get that safe pedestrian crossing. They actually presented at the SLRD meeting yeah, they're basically trying to get to CN executives and make a strong business case for the safety issues, that it's a safety issue that not only belongs to local communities here, but belongs to CN Rail. And it's a real safety issue, and that if we work together and they can provide some funding, we could provide safe access. So this is a letter requesting our support for their plan. If anybody has any questions or would like to move support. Councillor Zan. Move support, or you have a question?
I'll move support, please.
Second.
Any further discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. And I actually have I just got a meeting request yesterday from one of the municipal relations managers, I guess, from CN. We have a meeting set for April, and the plan is to visit that site when he's here. Next up, we have a letter from Area C resident Ms. Katrina Nightingale, presenting a letter from concerned citizens asking the village to declare a climate emergency. So I would a motion to have staff respond and let them know of the decision that was made earlier. Moved by Councillor Noble, seconded by Councillor Zant. Any opposed? Motion carries. Lots of correspondence. Next up, from Justice Nitya Iyer, Commission Chair for the BC Electoral Boundaries Commission. And this is an invitation for the village to express some views on the province's current electoral district boundaries. Commission is accepting input until May 31st, so you know. If you remember, federally, we changed our boundaries a couple times. We were sea to sky, and then we got sort of pushed up north, and now we're back to sea to sky. This is around the provincial boundaries in terms of our electoral area or region. So if the council would like, we could refer this back to another committee of the whole if we'd like to provide some input. That's something we'd like to see. Okay, motion to refer this to a future committee of the whole. Again, it would have to be in April, I guess, because this is due by May 31st. Moved by Councillor Antonelli, seconded by Councillor Zant. Any discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 correspondence for action regarding the Harrow Street or proposed Harrow Street affordable housing project. I'm not sure how everybody wants to deal with this. I sort of made a list of the different concerns that were spelled out in the different letters. And I think overall, a lot of them, I'd like to make sure that people, the letter writers, know that we're going to be looking at all those issues and assure them that the ones that they present in the letters, amongst others, will be coming forward for discussion when the application comes forward. I'm happy to speak to any of the letters or concerns at this point. I mean, again, for me, doing a review of them, concerns were around the traffic issues from Harrow Road to Highway 99, potential flood issues and stormwater and low level water in terms of how that gets moved around with this size of development. The introduction of this sort of housing and the impact it could have on the quality of life in the neighborhood. Safety re kids, concerns around the commercial floor being below flood construction level, parking allocations. There were questions around the decision-making on the location choice. And probably the single biggest comment was around the 5-story proposal, the appropriateness of that size in our town, the views, the potential to devalue nearby properties. And so there might be even more, but I basically want to make sure that staff through the letters records those discussion points and that they come forward when the application comes forward. But I'm happy for more input or thoughts from council. Councillor Craddock.
Yeah, thanks very much, Mayor Richmond. And I think all the people sending in the letters had some really good points to bring forward for us to look at for decision making. And I'm just going to throw this out for a suggestion. I'm not sure if we can do it or not, but I'm wondering if it wouldn't hurt to forward these letters to the society so they can also either respond or have them available to deal with at the same time. The more they hear this stuff, because if they're not watching our meeting and don't pick up our agenda, they won't know what some of the concerns are. So I don't know if that's able to be done or not, but it's part of the agenda package now, so there's no reason we couldn't do that. So just asking.
I think it's a good suggestion, but we would have to get permission from the letter writers to be able to do that sort of thing. Go ahead, Ms. Fraser.
We have provided the correspondence to Sea to Sky Community Service. We've just redacted the addresses and initial contact or personal contact information. So all of any correspondence that the village is receiving is being forwarded to Sea to Sky Community Services through our planning department.
Oh, that's great. I really appreciate that. That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you very much. I'll move to receive and file the letters.
Actually, I think maybe more appropriate would be to have staff respond and let the letter writers know that I got you next, Councilor Antonelli. If we're going to go for a motion like that, it would be more to let the folks, the authors, know that their concerns amongst other discussion points will be reviewed by council, and there will be an opportunity for the community to provide more input at the next step of the application process. So I just want people to be very clear to know that we're not, I don't want to just, first of all, we're not just washing over their letters right now and receiving it. I want people to understand that their concerns are top of mind, and we're going to bring them forward as discussion points, or they will be addressed through the application process and the presentation from staff, and therefore will be discussion points for council when the application comes forward. So I want to make sure that they know that it's not the end of the conversation by any means. In fact, it's the beginning of the conversation. Councilor Antonelli?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the points raised are really important, and that, you know, we'll certainly be discussing them in detail when the application comes forward.
Yeah. So a motion to have staff respond and let them know about the process for the application process. Moved by Councillor Craddock, seconded by Councillor Antonelli. Any opposed? Motion carries. And yeah, I agree. These are important concerns and we need to look at them carefully. This is an important project. I've had a lot of conversations around the community, a lot of support for it, and recognizing the need for this project, and as well as other people pointing out similar concerns. So lots of discussion to be had as the application comes forward. Did call a question, yeah. Next up, sorry, give me a second, I lost my spot. We're on correspondence regarding the non-farm use application for the ALC for the property located at 1641 Airport Road. And similarly, I think we should make sure that staff respond to each person to advise what the process is, and to also make clear that council's previous decision was simply to support having the application go to the ALC so that we could have more information regarding the value of that agricultural land, and that no support of the actual application has been made at this point. That would come later after the ALC review. Does anybody have anything to add to that, or would somebody like to make a motion to that effect?
Make the motion.
Second by Councillor Zant. Further discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4 correspondence for information. Would anybody like to point any out or move receipt? Councillor Craddock, move receipt of all 4, seconded by Councillor Zant. Further discussion? Any opposed? Motion carries. Decision on late business. Late business, we have none. Notice of motion. Question period. The regular council meeting is now open for questions from the public. Please be reminded that only questions directly related to items discussed during this meeting are permitted. If any members of the public attending via Zoom webinar wish to ask a question, please click on the raise hand feature in the webinar controls. This will notify village staff that you would like to ask a question, and staff will unmute your microphone when it is your turn to speak. Ms. Kennedy, do we have any questions from the public?
No, Mayor Richmond, I don't. Oh, we do have one question from Nikki Van Kirk.
Excellent. Ms. Van Kirk, welcome.
Hi there. Thanks for taking my question. I have a question around the term affordability. I feel like we've been bandying it about, developers talk about it. It's been talked about at this meeting several times, and it's really unclear to me what that means. How do we, as a community, try to ensure that we get affordability? And I did a little bit of looking at the census since 2016 to 2021. There's this feeling, I think, that if we build more, it will become affordable. And we looked at the population growth is about 32%, and the private dwellings has actually gone up 39% between those two censuses. And I would think we can all agree that things have not gotten any more affordable. So I think the idea of just building a variety of units, creating affordability is not going to work in the future. And I think it's up to the village, whether it's staff or how we get there, to define what we want for affordability. So when I hear, you know, Wedgwoods is going to have affordable dwellings, it's what does that actually mean? How do, you know, there was another one a few meetings ago talking about, you know, 10 years of affordability. And I remember the mayor asking for 25 years or something a little bit longer. And again, what does that even mean? So I'd like to hear your thoughts on how we can get to an actual definition of affordability that we can provide, or we can at least measure when developers talk about it, whether we're actually going to get something from that.
Thank you for those comments and question. I agree with much of what you said. You know, the housing affordability is really looked at more at as sort of as a spectrum nowadays. The needs within the spectrum, from fully supported housing, you know, skipping a few, moving up to entry-level housing, moving to single lot housing, single family housing. It's a whole spectrum of needs, and it's important that, and we have done some analysis here, and it's important that we continue to do analysis in terms of what aspects of that spectrum we most need to focus on, and as well to make sure we're looking at the whole spectrum. So that includes, you know, I had a similar question with regards to the lots at Wedgwood. You know, how affordable are they really? That you look at the number, doesn't seem affordable on the outset. I would say that there is a definite relationship between the ratio of demand versus inventory. And so, no, we cannot build our way out of affordability issues. I think we can't build our way out, but if we don't keep up somewhat with demand, then prices will rise as a result, because the demand will continue to outgrow at a great rate the supply, and there's definitely an impact there. Can we build our way out of it just by building units? No, and I think there's a lot of math to look at there, and that's why we look at it as a spectrum and go, okay, well, this Harrow Road project, this is to look at not quite supportive housing, but just one level up there, non-market housing, and how is that number going to be defined in terms of their rent there? Go up the spectrum a little more. The affordable type units that are being proposed at Wedgwood is more entry level for people to get in the market, where you can't get in the market at an entry level in the corridor. A lot of municipalities have adopted, you know, sort of a bit of a metrics in terms of what affordable means, and you could apply that to different levels of the spectrum. So affordable, like you know, if somebody wants to build apartments and is going to provide X amount of units that are below market, then usually it's like 30% below the market. In, you know, we've been using Squamish as an average in some of the metrics we've looked at in different groups. But you look at the market rent, what does it cost for, let's say, a 3-bedroom, and it should be 30% below that, and you could set those sort of guidelines. So it's a big conversation. We could have a long chat about it. Again, it's looking at it as a spectrum of what we could fill in as we go is very important. But yeah, and I can go on and on. I'll leave it at that. I hope that helps a little bit.
Yeah, I just think it's important that if developers are talking about giving some units being affordable as sort of a sweet talking to get building, you know, we have to understand what that means. And 100%. Right. And I feel like that's still very up in the air and people use the word and it looks good, but it doesn't really mean much.
It cannot mean much, but, and I 100% agree with you. You've got to make sure that when these proposals come forward, that we're digging deep into it. And how long is that affordability, whatever that is, being maintained? Is it in perpetuity? Is it for 10 years? Is it for 20 years? Who is managing that? Who gets access to that housing? You know, what's the process to get access to that housing? I think those are all really, really, really important details that we flesh out every time somebody mentions the word that or tries to sweeten their application with, oh, we can propose some affordable units. Those are the questions we need to ask at every point. When it comes to straight up rental units, it's an easier metrics, and I'd have to look at our housing analysis, but I believe it's 30% below the market value is what the province is using as a metrics for affordable. Thank you for your comments. Anybody else, Ms. Kennedy?
Yes, we have a question from Kayla Hale.
Go ahead.
Hi there, thanks for taking my question. I have a question in regards to the bylaw amendment related to waiving fees for affordable housing. Again, per the previous speaker, it's actually a really great point about what really falls into that. And any affordable housing project or development project that we're doing, has there been any assessment yet in terms of what the tax implications are? Like right now, I know there's only currently one affordable housing plan or project in current proposal mode that would see a waive of up to $100,000 in fees for development services. How many more are coming? How is that going to impact the existing taxpayer base when we're already on a high increase plan year over year? And then also, are these developments automatically applying for tax exemptions, which then is that being the responsible of the taxpayers who own the other types of properties in Village of Pemberton?
So a few things there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just trying to think of where to start on that. The tax exemptions are a tool that has been brought forward by the province and others to as something municipalities can do to support the development of affordable units. As the previous speaker said, defining affordability and making sure that it's secured is all very, very important part of the process. But this is one way municipalities, one tool that we have is in the tax exemption. It's kind of impossible to project how it would impact the budget because it's money, it's not taking away money out of the budget, it's money that would be coming in. So the development charges that would be applied to a development of this size would be coming in. You know, it would be on a case-by-case basis. We can't project how many affordable housing units are going to be built over the next 5 years, 10 years, and therefore we can't project how many exemptions are going to be provided. Yes, it brings extra people and extra infrastructure into town, and therefore one could argue that there is an impact on infrastructure and therefore a cost to the taxpayer. It doesn't directly impact the budget, again, because these would be extra monies coming in. And like I say, if through the province and through our housing assessment that we did, I'm going to say a couple of years ago, one of the big recommendations was to provide exemptions for these sorts of projects so that they can afford to be able to provide those services. So it is a tool that's often used around the province and everywhere, and is encouraged to be used as we are limited in terms of the tools we do have to bring in affordable housing. Ms. Fraser,
Right.
If I could just add to that, that's the purpose of the development of the policy. And part of that process would be for staff to look at what the impacts would be and include them so that council can make an informed decision around either waiving or reducing or refunding on application fees. So that will be coming as part of that next process.
Right. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Can I ask one more moderately related question? Thanks. The letters that were shared about the Harrow Road project, I had mine specifically, I had already shared that with Sea to Sky Community Services because I agree full visibility is really important. speaking for myself, I am not opposed to affordable housing. I think it's a crucial element of a community. I just want to make sure that, you know, we try and drive something that matches what we want Pemberton to be. I had also included the Diking District in that, and just speaking with Kevin, he indicated that yes, any letters would be considered when they are approached to offer a recommendation or feedback on any project, since they do get involved. But I'm not sure if I misunderstood. Do letters have to go directly to Diking District? Do you share those already if you're already sharing these ones with Sea to Sky Community Services? Same thing with BC Hydro or any of the telecom companies if they're involved in the decision making for new development projects?
They're a referral group when we do developments. So they get up large applications like that to provide any referral comments in case there is an impact to their flood mitigation work. As another part of the project, though, this is less about, this is when you build any development, a house right up to larger developments, you have to do what's called pre and post flow. And again, I don't want to get into too much detail because this will be addressed as the application
Later.
comes forward. But just so you understand, you have to do what's called pre and post flow analysis of the property. In other words, what is the settling and the movement of water on the property before you build on it? When you're done developing it, it has to be the exact same or better. You cannot produce, whether you build a house or an apartment building, you cannot be through your development pushing the water from your property onto your neighbor's property. You have to be able to manage that post-flow development so that the water does not impact your neighbor. That's the type of flooding that has to get analyzed. But yes, so that will get analyzed, that will get discussed, has to be proved out. And yes, the Pemberton Diking District is a referral group for applications like this.
Right. So as a community member, if I want Pemberton Diking District to know that we support them and the work that they do, and I've sent a letter to Village of Pemberton, as have many other residents already, and I'm sure you'll see more once this process is actually in full swing. Do we as residents also need to be sending these letters directly to a Diking District?
I
Or
would
are you
see them.
sharing those through Village of Pemberton?
We don't share with everybody's all the concerns on the letter. That would be kind of a big job. But if it sounds important for you that they hear your comments, so I would make sure that they get CC'd on it or sent a copy as well.
Gotcha.
Them directly.
Okay, perfect. They're a small organization, but huge impact on
Totally.
what they do. So just making sure they see any community feedback. Cool. Thank you.
No problem. Anyone else?
Yes, we have more questions. The next one is from Katrina Nightingale.
Go ahead. Ms. Nightingale, are you with us?
Sorry, I'm unmuted now. I just want to say, first of all, thank you very much for the courage to declare climate emergency and recognizing that there is an urgency and that how we act locally reflects our place in the world. And I know the people of Lytton and Merritt and Abbotsford will be grateful for that courage. And what I'm wondering is, I've heard throughout this meeting the amazing things that so many people are doing. And I'm wondering if it would be possible to, in some capacity, to showcase all the incredible green initiatives that are already going on in Pemberton, and from small to big. And there are so many people that have moved to Pemberton recently, and there's mothers with young children walking around everywhere. And sometimes people just don't know where to go. They don't know what to do. And I'm wondering if we could create an opportunity for, whether it be outside in the barn or somewhere where all the amazing things that people are already doing can be showcased, and then people can somehow at a grassroots level get more involved, because I know community engagement has been problematic, partly because of COVID, but there's a groundswell of support out there right now, and there's a momentum, and we need to tap into it.
So you're talking about showcasing what residents and individuals are doing, or what the village is doing?
Both. It's the village, it's people, it's I mean, there's so many things that are going on and have somewhat been stalled by COVID, but people are ready to pick up and start moving forward again. And I feel like if I had just moved to this town, I wouldn't know where to latch onto. You know what I mean? Like there's young people and they're moving here and they want to be part of the community. And I feel like there is there's a movement out there now that's really positive, and people want to be engaged. They're just not quite sure how to be engaged.
Thank you for those comments. I think that's there's some food for thought there, and if we can direct that to, pretty sure Ms. Pedrini is on the meeting right now. So when we look at that action plan, the community action plan, and how that engages the community, I think we could definitely look at some sort of event that you're describing there. So noted, and we'll make sure that staff is aware of that suggestion.
Thank you.
Councilor Craddock, go ahead.
Yeah, I think through the OCP process too, that's going to be a good opportunity for people to be involved and for us to bring that stuff forward and see how we're going to make this community go and be a greater place to live than what it is over the next number of years.
Thank you. Any other questions, Ms. Kennedy?
Yes, we do have more. We also have one that came in through the question and answer feature. I don't know if you can see that. Would you like me to read it to you?
I'm not seeing it, so yes, please.
Okay. Yeah. I have read with interest the CCAP and OCP documents and this evening's current emergency climate change adoption, which is very positive. As such, is VOP considering mandating that all in progress and new multi-unit built residential or commercial be built with heating pumps and have EV chargers in condo or townhouse to meet VOP's climate change mitigation initiatives? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I know that's been considered. I'd rather Ms. Pedrini answer to that question.
We could bring her on.
That'd be great. She will give you a more clear response.
Yeah, just bring her in.
Hi, Ms. Pedrini. Were you able to hear that question?
Thank you for bringing me on. I've been dying to answer a lot of these questions. I did hear, sorry, Gwendolyn, could you repeat it?
Yes, well, ultimately the question is the VOP considering mandating that all in progress and new multi-unit built residential or commercial be built with heating pumps and have EV chargers in condo or townhouse to meet VOP's climate change mitigation initiatives?
Okay, so both of those suggestions are incorporated in our community climate action plan. So we have included actions about accelerating the implementation of the Energy Step Code so that it also applied to multifamily and commercial buildings. Currently, residential single family buildings must be built to Step Code level 4, but the same does not apply to multifamily and commercial. But it is in our plan as an initiative that we want to undertake, and that would be spearheaded by Development Services and the Building Department. And then in terms of the EV charging, excuse me, we have already mandated that all new buildings, new single family homes are EV charger ready, which means they must provide the rough-in for the electrical charging station for an EV. The same has not yet happened for multifamily developments or commercial developments, but again, it's covered in our community climate action plan as the direction that we want Village to go in. So while it's not in place yet, those ideas have been captured.
Thank you. No, she's not live. I was going to ask if that answered the question, but she's not live. Thank you for that, Ms. Virginie.
The other thing I wanted to mention, I actually put it in the chat, which I know I'm probably not meant to do, but we do have a very clear definition of what the Village of Pemberton considers as affordable housing. It's included in both our age-friendly affordable housing needs assessment and our age-friendly affordable housing action plan. And it is based on linking housing costs to a household income. And so for the purposes of our affordable housing action plan, affordable housing is defined as housing that a single person or household can afford to rent or purchase without spending more than 30% of their before tax income. And we ask for housing agreements from developers. If they tell us they're going to be providing affordable housing, then we get them to basically commit to that in the form of a housing agreement, which is a covenant placed on the property. So the planning staff is well aware of what we're looking for in terms of affordability based on our policies that council has adopted. And we also get them to secure that in the form of a covenant. So a lot of times people will use the term affordable when they actually mean attainable, which means, you know, it's part of the housing spectrum, as Mayor Richmond already mentioned, but it's maybe a little cheaper than a large single family lot is a small single family lot, but might not necessarily be affordable in terms of the person owning it spending less than 30%, but it's attainable based on, you know, 2 incomes or whatever. So I would just like the community to rest assured that we are aware of what we're seeking, and we don't just take developers' word for it when they tell us they're about to build affordable housing.
Any other questions, Ms. Kennedy?
Yes, we do have a few more questions. The next one is from Stu Osborne.
Go ahead.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you very much for answering some questions tonight. Thanks for recognizing there's 9 letters being sent to Council with concerns about the Sea to Sky Community Services proposed building on Harrow Road. At the February 23rd online meeting, Sea to Sky Community Services indicated that they had 550 surveys. Their surveys they'd asked citizens to complete have been completed. I'm just curious if Council and yourself, Mayor, will be receiving that feedback from Sea to Sky Community Services.
We certainly will, and that'll be coming forward as part of the application process. And we haven't seen it yet, so I don't. And that's kind of one of the reasons we're not digging into some of the details on the letter. We're recording the concerns and making sure that they get addressed and discussed at the next meeting, but we haven't seen the results of those surveys and we haven't seen the application. So yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, we have Jacinta LaRue next.
Go ahead.
Oh, hi. I guess I also sent you a note, but congratulations for declaring an emergency climate tonight, Council and Mayor. Really appreciate that. I guess my question is based on everything I've heard and read on your site is, would the council members consider banning fire or stopping fire permits being given to farmers in a residence that burn large wood piles every spring and summer that releases very dangerous airborne particles and have unpleasant smell, and a visual, of course, is something that is an issue, but it all sort of contributes to many health issues. Is this something that would fall within your climate change initiatives?
Most of the burns you're referring to don't happen inside the village of Pemberton within the urban boundaries. A lot of that happens in the rural area outside the village. The one place that it would be sort of applicable would be when building new developments and some of the burns that might come out of the tree clearing there. But in terms of farmers and the way you describe it, there's not a lot of that within the village boundaries, but I'll refer to Ms. Pagini if she has anything to add.
Well, we do talk about the health impacts of climate change in the Community Climate Action Plan. So we do acknowledge that the smoky skies does lead to health complications, and that our stakeholder, Vancouver Coastal Health, has made us very aware of the health impacts. We don't exclusively speak to your point, though, in terms of banning open air burning. So yeah, it's not in there currently.
Thank you. Next up.
We have another question from Nikki Van Kirk.
Okay, and we just everybody for a first time?
Yes, everyone who's
perfect. Go ahead, Ms. Van Kirk.
Thank you, and thanks for that definition of the affordability. That seems really clear, and that's probably good for council to know as well. I am curious about if the developer puts this on the covenant, what happens when the next person buys? Like are the realtors looking there and then evaluating people's income when they make offers? It seems very impractical and hard to believe that the real estate agents are doing that. So how does it go to the second buyer to keep it affordable?
Covenants run with the title, run with the land.
But so that actually happens? Do we have any places like that where you actually can say, here's my income and therefore my offer is way under asking because that's
currently we do not have any dedicated non-market affordable housing in the Village of Pemberton besides the Lions. And the Lions Villa is a BC Housing sort of funded affordable housing option for seniors and persons with disabilities, and they do have to prove their incomes fall below a certain threshold in order to live in those spaces. The affordable housing proposal that Sea to Sky Community Service is bringing forward would have some of the units dedicated as non-market affordable housing, and Sea to Sky Community Services would be managing those units. And just as they do in Squamish, I believe they have 2, if not 3 similar apartment rental affordable housing projects that they manage. And so they would be the agency that would, that people would have to apply through and prove their incomes fall below the certain threshold to obtain those units. Not all their units are meant to be non-market. They have some at an attainable market rate, and then they have others that would be deeply subsidized. And those are meant for very vulnerable populations.
Yeah, it seems like a model that would suit, a nonprofit organization to manage it. Whereas, we heard the Benchlands talking about affordable units. We've heard other developers talking about it, but I can't imagine that works unless there's actually an organization that's going to oversee that. It's not in too many people's best interest when they're selling their house, including real estate agents and the sellers, to take a really low offer.
So if I may, the village doesn't have an organization like the Whistler Housing Authority, which is the organization in Whistler that manages their affordable housing for the community. But I would sense, we haven't had the situation yet where we've had units that have been secured through a housing agreement to be affordable, where we just haven't had it come yet. We've got a couple in the works, but an agency like Sea to Sky Community Services could be approached to do that management of the units for those projects, or they could be doing the management themselves. So just like I said, the only non-market affordable housing project we have in town is the Lions Villa, which is supported through the Lions organization as a nonprofit.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, I was going to say something similar. That's a housing authority that would normally manage that sort of thing. When you don't have much inventory, you don't need a housing authority, and you try to establish the parameters through the housing agreement with the developer, and it's all in there and it's on covenant and it follows the property. So that's how you would establish it in perpetuity, or if they want to put, it's negotiated for a shorter time period, 20 years or whatever it might be, that's as part of the housing agreement and that's put on the covenant on the property. There was there has been the conversation that's come up every now and again as a corridor to discuss a housing authority and what that would look like, to bring together some of the individual projects that are coming out. That's certainly nothing that's been actioned right now. And it's just the conversation that's come up, especially, Squamish doesn't really have a housing authority like Whistler does. So how do we manage all the affordability pieces that are starting to come to the corridor, perhaps as a region or as a local housing authority? And again, when I say we don't have a lot of tools, just so everybody is clear, we can't obviously force a developer to provide affordable housing units. If you own a commercial piece of property or a piece of property that's zoned to have townhouses built on it, and you come, and as a developer, you come in with an application that meets all of the bylaw, all of the zoning, the process will start to move through. It's once developers start asking for variances and changes to what's allowed, that provides council with an opportunity to start to have a bit of what we'll call a negotiation or a conversation where it's like, well, you know, if you would like higher density, or you would like this, or less parking, or shorter setbacks. Once that comes into play, that gives us an opportunity to say, well, we'd like to see some provision for affordable housing. When that conversation happens, along with that conversation, there is, you know, in lockstep, how would that get managed? How does it get, you know, supported over the long term, and how does it get managed? Whether, you know, is it the developer, which is not generally a relation, I guess, a relationship that I like, that the developer has control over the affordable housing management. Who is it then? We don't have the ability. Obviously, we don't have a housing authority. So how does that work? That's part of the discussion every time. And as Ms. Jeannie said, we haven't had the opportunity to have a lot of those discussions. We're just now starting to see developers come in and with proposals that allow us to say, okay, well, this is, you're looking for a change to this or that. Well, what are you going to provide us for affordable housing or other assets? But yeah, that's basically the conversation. We can't force developers to just provide it. And when it comes in, though, we have to talk about how it gets managed and how it gets preserved, and what we're asking for as it fits in within that spectrum. So the 30% definition that Ms. Pedrini said that council should know is one way of looking at it on there. There's the other comparison I was referring to is comparing to local rent. Average rent and paring it down that way. So there's other ways to get the metrics and to negotiate with developers as they come in, but it's limited, unfortunately. More questions, Ms. Kennedy?
No, Mayor Richmond, there are no more questions.
Okay, well, that was great. Thank you to the audience, or to the panel that was listening and weighed in, and for sticking through the whole meeting. We don't often get that level of conversation or engagement, so we really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And we have no rise with report, so that takes us to a motion to adjourn the regular council meeting, please. Moved by Councillor Zant, seconded by Councillor Caddick. Any opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you for a long day, everybody. Have a great evening.